Okay, it being 6 o'clock, I'll call to order this March 10th, 2025 meeting of the Chelmsford Select Board. And I want to announce that Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and also recording it for later viewing by the public. So if you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and I also want to announce that Select Board member Pat Maloney is joining us via Zoom this evening. So with that, we'll do public service announcements.
First, we have some announcements from the Chelmsford Health Department. Some upcoming free events. They are hosting Sober Karaoke every second Friday of the month from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts in the Cabaret Room. Admission is free, and snacks and mocktails are available for purchase. They are also hosting an opioid overdose response training on March 19th from 3 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. at the Chelmsford Town Hall in the Fire Training Room. Participants will receive an opioid rescue kit that includes Narcan. Youth mental health first aid training is being held on March 27th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the Chelmsford Town Hall. The training teaches adults how to identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental health and substance use challenges among youth ages 12 to 18. They are also hosting a community adult and child CPR first aid AED class on March 18th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Chelmsford Town Hall in the Fire Training Room. Participants who complete the 4-hour training will obtain an American Heart Association Heart Saver CPR AED first aid certificate that's valid for 2 years, and there is a $20 fee for the card. In regard to some free services, there is Care Solace. This is a mental health referral service that also offers housing and food insecurity support for Chelmsford residents and employees. It's available 24/7 with multilingual support, and they provide care regardless of insurance. The health department's also hosting a depression and anxiety support group on March 25th. It's every fourth Tuesday of the month from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. It is open to adults 18 years and older. Registration is preferred but not required. They also have blood pressure screenings being held the first Thursday of the month from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. or 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., at the Chelmsford Health Department, and also the last Thursday of the month from 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m., and that is at the Chelmsford Senior Center, and no registration is required for those. The Chelmsford Health Department is also partnering with the Greater Lowell Health Alliance to host a community focus group to collect data for the 2025 Greater Lowell Community Needs Assessment. This helps decision makers in our community understand what health issues are most important through the eyes of the community members themselves. Participants will receive a $25 gift card, and the focus group will take approximately 60 to 90 minutes. Please contact them today if you would like to join or if you have questions. The Public Health and Wellness Coordinator and Public Health Social Worker recently completed a professional grant writing class. This was vital as grants provided the funding needed to create and sustain health programs, enhance services, and address community health needs. With these new skills, the team is now better equipped to secure funding for innovative projects and improve public health outcomes. Also, they are announcing that March is National Kidney Month, dedicated to raising awareness about kidney health and the importance of early detection and prevention of kidney disease. We encourage everyone to educate themselves about kidney health, recognize the risk factors for kidney disease, and adopt healthy lifestyle habits to protect these essential organs. Also, the University of Massachusetts Lowell has a public health panel. The Public Health and Wellness Coordinator participated on this health panel for the senior seminar along with other public health professionals, and students got a variety of information regarding jobs in the public health sector and were able to ask questions and apply for internships. And last but not least, from the health department, they would like everyone to know that they have free COVID tests available in their office. Please, 1 box per person in your family. Stop in anytime. And here I have a public notice. The Chelmsford Select Board and School Committee will meet on March 24th, 2025 to appoint one representative and one alternate representative to the Neshoba Valley Technical High School Committee for 3-year terms ending March 31st, 2028. Applications are available on the town website at www.chelmsfordma.gov. Applications should be forwarded to the town manager's office by 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. We have a Freeman Lake Diagnostic and Management Assessment update. Open office hours will be held at the Chelmsford DPW at 9 Alpha Road on Wednesday, March 12th from 1 to 3 p.m. to discuss the Freeman Lake Diagnostic and Management Assessment Draft Report. Feel free to come by or contact Courtney Thompson at cthompson@chelmsfordma.gov with any questions. Here is an announcement regarding this Chelmsford strategic plan. Share your thoughts on Chelmsford's draft strategic plan by March 14th. There is a link here that you can access. It is https://bit.ly/chelmplan to review the plan. Another announcement regarding the volunteer fair and recognition on Saturday, March 22nd from 1 to 4 p.m. at the Chelmsford Senior Center. There is going to be a volunteer fair for those who are looking to get more involved in Chelmsford. It is an opportunity for nonprofit organizations, community groups, and town departments to connect with potential volunteers and new members, network with each other, and showcase their organizations. It's sponsored by the Chelmsford Public Library and the Chelmsford Senior Center. Oh, and at 2 p.m., several longtime Chelmsford volunteers will be recognized for their contributions, and a reception will follow after. And we have an announcement from Mass DOT regarding the Chelmsford Lowell Bridge Replacement Project Public Information Meeting. This is a meeting to update the public about upcoming work related to the Chelmsford Lowell Bridge Replacement Project. This project will replace 2 bridges in the town of Chelmsford, including Westford Street over I-495 in Chelmsford and Route 3A over I-495 on the Chelmsford-Lowell line. The meeting will be Wednesday, March 26th at 6 p.m. at the police training room. For inquiries, you can email chelmsfordlowellbridges@dot.state.ma.us. Read this one. No, Harrison. Okay. Chelmsford town elections will be held on April 1st, 2025. People may vote in person on election day or via a mail-in ballot. There is no early voting for the town elections. The last day to request a mail-in ballot is March 25th at 5 p.m. For any questions, you can reach out to the town clerk's office, 978-250-5202. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're now at the public input part of our meeting. Is there anybody here that would like to address the board on any topic?
I would, please.
Is it anything that's coming up later in the meeting or not?
Oh, no.
It's not, then you should come now, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
So I just want to let you know you have 3 minutes.
Okay, great. My name is Eric Gath. I live at 161 Boston Road. As many of you may already know, there's going to be a non-binding public opinion advisory question on the ballot at the local election on April 1st. The question states, should the town of Chelmsford amend its zoning and general bylaws to allow for the retail sale and delivery of recreational marijuana? I'm here to speak as a proponent of this question and how a local cannabis dispensary could benefit the town. As I mentioned, I live at 161 Boston Road. I'm married with 2 girls, 7 and 10 years old. Both go to South Rose School. First 20 years of my professional career, I worked as a mechanical engineer designing mechanical systems. In 2017, I designed my first marijuana cultivation facility, and since then I have helped over 100 clients build dispensaries and grow facilities in Massachusetts. In 2019, I applied for a license in the city of Malden and opened Misty Mountain Shop in 2022. Throughout the last 8 years, there have been a lot of changes in the industry. I believe that the industry has become a lot more accepted. Many people are discovering the benefits of cannabis products, and a lot of the stereotypes and concerns that were once associated with the products have greatly diminished. I'll name a few. When the first dispensaries opened, parking was a major concern. It's now no different than a typical retail store. Many people were concerned with security. I could speak from experience that dispensaries have some of the best security systems, some with well over 60 cameras. All products are tested by third parties before they can be sold in a dispensary. There's still a black market for marijuana. So having a safe way to learn and obtain products is a benefit to all our residents. Each dispensary could create over 20 jobs. A lot of people love working for dispensaries. If I put an ad out on Indeed, I get over 100 applications a day. And last but not least, local tax revenue. 3% of gross revenue from any dispensary goes straight to the town. The town of Drake and Lowell both receive well over $1 million in tax revenue. Barica receives over $500,000 from one store. Chelmsford could expect similar numbers. I'll be talking to Sam Chase of Chasing the Facts next week. We haven't nailed down a time or day yet, but please check it out, and we'll talk a lot more about this in the show. So, in summary, I urge everyone to think of all the long-term benefits that a cannabis dispensary could bring to the town and the community, and vote in favor at the April 1st election. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is anybody else in the room that would like to address the board? Okay, is
No
anybody?
answer. No.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go to committee vacancies.
The following boards and committees have vacancies as of March 10th, 2025. The CCA Town Hall Advisory Committee, the Clean Energy and Sustainability Committee, the Commission on Disabilities, the Council on Aging Board, the Conservation Commission, the Cultural Council, the Historic District Commission, the Holiday Decorating Committee, the Parade Committee, and the Recycling Committee. If you are interested in serving on a town board or committee, please complete an online application available on the town website. And for more information, you can contact the town manager's office at 978-250-5202.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a couple licenses this evening. The first is a common victular license for Playa Bowls at 18 Boston Road. Anybody here?
They're on the Zoom call.
Okay.
Dana and home? Okay, there you go. Please turn your microphones on.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Dana, could you try speaking?
Still can't hear
Still
you.
can't hear you. You've got to be kidding me. Pat, you can't hear Pat either. Pete was just here. Okay. Yeah, can you let Pete know, please? Hang on one moment, please.
You should have tested it.
What?
You
They
should
did
have
test
tested it.
They did. We were told that it worked. They've had meetings since. Maybe a few minutes. You want to just
Okay,
move on to
yeah,
something else?
right, yeah. So we can do the lodging house license. Is anybody, okay, if you want to come up to the microphone.
Well, we can't hear Pat if he has any questions. I don't know how we're gonna do this. We can't hear Pat, we can't hear Pat Maloney either.
Right.
And this is a hearing, so,
Well, it's not a hearing, no.
well, it's a discussion.
Right. it's
I
a-
think
it's
he's
a-
in-
Said he'd do the hand signal.
Say something, Pat.
He did.
Just said he'll do the hand signal, so obviously he can't.
Okay, if he has
we
questions,
should-
we can delay it, but let's try to get through this one. Okay, so if you want to talk about your license?
Okay, well, I'm Sandra Ivos. My father's Leo Forcier. He's the owner of the building. I work with him as a property manager. We got a phone call a month or two ago saying that we don't have an active license, which we were not aware of this. And I guess it was a number of years. It hasn't been active, but we've been running the same house over there for years since when we purchased it, it was run the same way. So we're just looking to reactivate or renew our license. That's it.
Okay, Paul, do we have anything any reason why we know that this happened?
No, like I said, we sent it out to departments for comment. There were no concerns. Is noted in the submittals from the health department, tax collector's office, community development, and obviously, building department will do a certificate of inspection, but that's typical.
I think Pat's question was, how did it happen?
We don't know. We don't know. They had annually up for renewals, and then, like I said, the best we can get, because we've had turnover in the administrative part of our office, is, I don't want to say we missed it, but it was just not flagged for renewal, and then again, it became to our awareness recently that they were operating at that location.
So it is supposed to be an annual renewal,
Yes.
correct? With our all the other licenses, so. All right, we don't know why it happened, but it did, so anybody else have any questions, concerns about renewing this license?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, I guess it's been 11 years, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know when this use table came into effect, but I looked at the Chapter 195 zoning use tables, and the property is in the RA district, or RA zoning. For a boarding house, whether it's owner-occupied or non-owner-occupied, according to the use tables, it requires a special permit from the Board of Appeals, right here. So I guess my question is, from a total compliance with, I understand the Mass General Law requires we issue a license, but given that there hasn't been a license in place for 11 years, there's probably no grandfathering if that use table changed or something in the last 11 years. Do they also have to now go get a special permit from the Board of Appeals, or do we now need to ask council about that?
I don't believe so, because this was reviewed by Evan and Jose, our building department, zoning enforcement officer, and Evan, who's obviously very familiar with the bylaws, and we're not aware of any bylaw violation or permit that's required.
Well, I
for this.
understand that they weren't aware, but I don't know if anybody looked at it.
Well, would that come up in the COI inspection,
But
the
it's been-
building department? Would
Because it's
that
been
be-
an ongoing use, even though it's been unlicensed use, it's been an ongoing,
No, but I'm saying they haven't had an inspection yet,
right.
right? A COI inspection. So
Right.
is that something that would come up during that, I would
It-
assume?
It may, but my sense is when they received this application for review, they would have checked for zoning compliance.
Well,
I go way back to the beginning when a license was
I
almost
don't
automatically.
have an issue with renewing this license. I'll just make that clear. Given that it's been 11 years, I'm just asking, can somebody make sure that there isn't something with that time lapse that, I don't know when this use table was established, or if it even existed this way when they were operating
we have-
before.
Fire chief has some comment.
Sure.
If I can just add, we have been doing inspections there every year. And we convey any concerns we have to the building department, so it's not like we see an inspectional gap, because we're doing the inspections. Any information we have, any violations we have, we address it, and we do connect, collaborate with the building department, so, and she knows this, that we're there, so. So I just don't want the message to be out there that it's not being reviewed and inspected, because it is. So as far as the zoning, I can't answer that part.
Right. That's all
thank
I'm
you.
asking.
Yeah,
Can we
okay,
just go
we'll
ahead,
ver-
check that?
We'll check that
'Cause
before we release the license.
Okay, how long have you been doing this at that location?
My father purchased it, I want to say 97,
Okay,
and it was the same type of building prior to us owning it. Or him owning
okay,
it.
so it's possible or likely or what?
But it's
that-
pre-existing,
Well, that it would have got a special permit at that time.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, if you have any documentation about that, that would be good, but realizing it is 30 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the only thing I found that I brought with me is just old lodging licenses and our documents of when we were asked to fill out paperwork to get a license. But I don't really have anything prior to that, and then us purchasing it.
Okay, fire chief has something else to
Sure.
say.
Just if I could add a little clarity, so back when Finnegan owned the building, we enforced it, we looked at I think it was the bylaws back then, this is going back probably 20, 25 years ago, and we enforced the sprinkler provision. So not only did we look at the fire prevention, fire protection laws, but also I know building at the time, they did due diligence. So my guess, my sense is some of this stuff that we're discussing tonight took place back then.
Okay.
Again, the sprinkler provision kicked in probably about 20 years ago.
Okay,
So it was something we enforced on them.
all right, okay,
So that's my
thanks.
And I'm not even suggesting the contingency. I just would like to just head check, so we could just check into that
Yeah.
and verify that there's nothing that needs to be done, that would be great.
I
Okay,
thought a lodging license at one time used to get one automatically or something. I'm talking about way back in the, but I did, I thought it, came kind of automatically with the
okay,
license.
okay. Any other questions? Then we'll have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the lodging house license for Fourscore Properties LLC, DBA Stevens Manor at 146 Tingsboro Road as presented.
You want to second that since,
I'll second it.
all right, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Pat? George?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye,
Virginia, okay, and I'm an aye, 5-0, okay.
Thank you very much.
thank you, good luck.
Thank you. All right, I'm assuming we still don't have that fixed yet?
No, we still have no audio capability.
Okay,
He's
Would
trying.
eliminating the waiting room do it?
I have no idea.
'Cause-
Test, test,
Yeah, there he
test.
is. Now we
Oh,
can-
there he is.
Now we can hear you, Pat.
all right, all
Are.
Hi,
Huh?
Now we can
There
hear
you
you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
right, so we'll go back.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you guys hear me?
yes.
Okay,
Can they hear
we can
us?
hear everybody.
We can hear everybody now. We're back.
So let's go back to the common victular license for Playa Bowls. So who do we have speaking?
I'll get started. My name is Hung Lam. I am one of the owners, along with Dana Netton on the line, for a local franchise called Pliables that we're hoping to bring to Chelmsford. So, Dana?
Yeah, so just a little background on us. So we opened our first Pliables location right outside of BC, where Hung and I and a couple of our friends all went to college about 6 years ago now. And we're really excited to bring it to Chelmsford. It's basically adding a new healthy food option to the community. We also spend a lot of time, giving back to the community through various events and fundraisers and things of the like. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's just a new healthy food option. We primarily serve smoothie bowls, smoothies, fresh juices, and yeah, anything else you want to add, Hung?
Yeah. No, yeah. So our main foods are the acai bowls, but we have like pitaya bowls, coconut bowls, but it's all healthy food. So there's no open flames or anything. So I know that's always a question. But we're going to be taking over the Dunkin' Donuts space right on 18 Boston Road. But we're excited to be here. To what Dana said, one of our goals when we do come into a community is to try to be a part of it as much as possible. So I live a little bit south of Boston in Milton. So I am essentially boots on the ground. So I rotate through to our different shops, and we also have a marketing team with 2 representatives that help to just essentially say yes to everything. That's what we tell them. So, so we hopefully will be able to, support any causes and then hire, local folks. That's one of our goals as well is just hiring some of the high school students and any college students that are home from break. So that's one of the things we love about it as well.
Okay, do you have any idea on your timeline, when you'd be opening?
Yeah, I could speak to that. So we have applied for all of our permits and everything. So I believe we're at kind of the end stages. I swung by there just last week to the building department. So they were just waiting on one more thing from our contractor. I actually spoke today with Mark from the health department, so he approved our actual plans. I just have to fill out a couple other pieces of information from a health standpoint. But once we do get the permit, generally it takes about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks to build it out. This one might be a little bit shorter because we're taking over the Dunkin' Donuts, so we're not moving any of the plumbing essentially. It's really just a lot of painting and just more cosmetic decor that we'll be updating.
Okay, any other questions from the board?
No.
Okay, so we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the common victular license for PB Chelmsford LLC, DBA Playa Bowls at 18 Boston Road, Suite 300, as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, so roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George? Erin? Virginia?
Aye.
And aye. So congratulations and good luck, and we'll be there soon.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
So much.
Looking forward to it.
Take care.
Okay, reports and presentations. First up is Woodbine Street, the layout.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just a brief one. At the spring annual town meeting, there is a street acceptance for an extension to Woodbine Street. And the way this process works, as we know in the past, it's sort of a cumbersome one, is tonight you have to make a motion to, the notice of intent to lay out the extension to Woodbine Street as a public way. We then send that off to the planning board, which is scheduled to take this up on Wednesday evening. They'll report back you'll have a report at your next meeting in 2 weeks on the 24th. At that point, you would approve the layout of the Woodbine Street extension, and then that goes to the town meeting. It's recorded with the town clerk. So the formal action, as you can see, just to orient people who are watching it, we have a map here on the screen. It's the end of Woodbine Street and closest to Market Basket or the town line if you were to travel onto Woodbine Street, up to ultimately to Delgarian Terrace. So again, as we've seen in the past, when the DPW is going out doing engineering and improvements and drainage and so forth, they review matters. And remember, the most recent one was the one up in Drum Hill on Parkhurst Road. And here's another situation where there's a section of Woodbine Street that's not been formally accepted. So you have the motion before you. And again, if you make the motion for your intent to lay it out, we'll then await a recommendation from the planning board at your next meeting.
Okay, any questions from the board about this? Looks like not, so we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion that the select board vote its intention to layout of Woodbine Street as a public way, the parcel of land shown as Woodbine Street on a plan entitled Street Acceptance Plan, Woodbine Street, Chelmsford, Massachusetts, dated August 29th, 2024, prepared by O'Hara Engineering Services, Inc., and to forward the proposed layout as shown on the plan to the planning board for its comments and recommendations pursuant to General Law C 41801I.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Erin?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm aye. Thank you. Okay. Next is representatives from Weston and Sampson about PFAS remediation on 54 Richardson Road. Are they here?
Yeah, Paul McKinley's on the Zoom, as is Linda Cook from Weston and Sampson Engineers.
Okay, whoever wants to go first, you're up.
Yep, good evening. I'm Paul McKinley from Weston and Sampson, and asked my colleague Linda Cook to join us tonight. She was instrumental in doing a PFAS source evaluation, which was presented in a phase 2 report that went in end of December of this last year. And so thank you very much for pulling up the slide deck. I'll be giving you a brief overview of where we're at on the mitigation. And I asked Linda to present on some of her findings about the PFAS source evaluation, which was included in that report. So if you could jump to the next slide. So this slide is, we thought we'd start off with a site map and a figure. Just want to walk you through some of the key features here to keep in mind as I talk about the overview of site mediation, but also Linda's going to hit on a few of the high points in her evaluation. So on this figure, the circles are actually highlighting monitoring wells which exceeded during our November 2024 sampling round. Just to set the table a little bit, we sample upwards of 25, 30 points, sampling points on each during each seasonal monitoring round. And the remediation system, we installed a pump and treat system that's been operating, and it's been really doing a wonderful job in areas that it can reach. And we're left with only 5 locations that exceed current Mass DEP PFAS 6 standards. So you'll see to the north is MW 115, and that is in an area, we call that the dog park area up to the northern portion of the site. It's highlighted with MW 104, which is a well that's been flagged by DEP. I don't want to steal Linda's thunder, but DEP has always noted that there is a likely secondary source of PFAS in that area, is why we call it out. The 3 circles sort of central or focused around the buildings are in the source area. I will say that our current remedial system is operating a little per DEP's request. We actually had to modify the system, and it's not operating quite at full capacity. And our plan is, as I'll get to another slide, is actually expand the remedial system's radius of influence with a higher pumping rate to capture those 3 wells that are circled. So it's sort of in the center of the slide there. And the well at the bottom of the site to the south is a location that also exceeds, but it's close to MW 101. I'll highlight there, right on Richardson Road, and Linda's going to talk about that and a potential alternate sourcing area on that location. And again, just to round out some of the locations, Linda's going to talk about MW3 and WSPZ2, which is in Cold Springs Brook. It's a location that was installed right in the stream itself. And then we have locations MW 113 and 114, which are located on the North Chelmsford Water District property. So just please keep those locations in mind as we walk through the presentation. Linda, did I catch everything?
I think you did.
All right,
That was
Paul,
perfect.
what are the circles where you don't have them labeled? Are those ones you're also talking about?
So again, the circles themselves are highlighting wells which still exceed Mass DEP standards. There's only 5 of them that still exceed the Mass DEP PFAS 6 standard during the November round. So right at the legend there, it shows you what those locations are depicting, which are monitoring wells which exceed.
My question is, of those 5, you've labeled MW 115 as one that you're going to talk about, but are we not talking about the other 4?
We certainly can. I have a slide on them. Like, for instance, the location that is south of the building, it's called WSMW 106, is actually the location of the highest PFAS concentrations in the 60s. And just to refresh, the actual standard itself is 20. So if you have, I mean, those are the highlights. All the other locations, sort of the PFAS 6 falls in the 30-ish range, just by memory. So again, I just wanted to highlight and show the distribution of exceedances that we still have left. And really, I guess the takeaway from this slide is there's only a few locations left that are exceeding current Mass DEP standards. So really, we've made a lot of progress since we've started with this site a few years ago.
Yeah, and some of those locations we're not discussing in detail. We're discussing some of the alternate sources. And those circles right on the property near the source area, they are associated with the source at this property and not an alternate source. So what I'll be discussing is more some alternate sources in the area that are not related to the DEP property, the
Thank you.
DPW property.
Thank you, that helps.
Excuse me.
Did that answer your question? And maybe if we bounce through
Yes,
some of the,
yes, it
a few
did.
more slides, it might become
My
clearer.
mic doesn't appear
what
to
we're
be
talking
working, but yes, it did.
Okay. So again, as I highlighted before, just a quick overview of where we're at. The pump and treat system, we began operation on July 5th, 2022. Thus far, it's pumped about 117 million gallons. And we've had no exceedances, and really the system's been operating very, very smoothly. We've had really almost no downtime whatsoever, day here, day there, from a power outage, but really it's been operating very smoothly. The data I'll be talking about is from the most recent November 2024 seasonal round. And as I highlighted before, there's only 5 wells remaining of about the 25 to 30 locations that we sample. As I highlighted, right south of the building, this WS-MW106, this represents the maximum concentration on the site, which is about 65 parts per trillion. And that exceeds the Mass DEP standard of 20 parts per trillion. And that Mass DEP standard is a sum of about 6 key compounds. PFOS is one, and Linda will focus on those. I highlighted the dog park well. This is something that Linda's going to get into a little more detail, in that it does represent a secondary source. Mass DEP was concerned about this location and sort of reserved the right to ask us to expand the remedial system into that area. And MW115 at the northern, that was the circle at the northernmost part of the figure, does have an exceedance, but the well that's in the center, MW104, has actually been below standards. So this is MW104 that's highlighted there, right at the dog park area. That's the well really that's been of interest to DEP, and it's been below standards for the last 4 rounds. So again, that's a very good trend for us, and it suggests that expansion of the remedial system to that area may not be warranted. So again, some good news. If you back on the other slide, just as a reminder, MW1, which is in in our source area, that well represented, and that's where we put our treatment system and focus our efforts. That used to represent the maximum on the site, and the maximum on the site, it was about 1,400 parts per trillion before we turn on the remedial system, and we're down to 2.14. So a massive reduction in the PFAS in the source area. It's been below standards for the last 4 rounds, which is great. And as I'll present in the next slide, unfortunately, the Mass DEP standard is likely to go down in the coming months or years to mimic the EPA thresholds that will be implemented. And even there, if it goes down to the 4, which we think it will, and that'll be on the next slide, note that concentration will actually meet the new standards. Yes, so if you focus on this slide here, the EPA maximum contaminant levels for PFAS are likely to go down in the near future. And so I just wanted to highlight and have this up here to show you that even with the new standards in our source area from our sort of key indicator well that represented the previous maximum on the site, we're actually down below these new thresholds that when they're implemented, we'll have to meet in order to get site closure. So, even though they're moving the remedial goalpost on us, I guess my point here is that in our source area, we're actually almost there at the new finish line. Now, we have some work to do around the fringes of where we can pump and treat from the area of capture. But I just wanted to sort of show there that in the source area itself, we've made really significant progress and even meeting this new proposed standard when it goes into effect. And so just upcoming activities, I mentioned before, right now we have 4 sort of media or treatment vessels in the site structure there. We're going to expand that with 2 more vessels, and that'll allow us to pump and treat, pump at a higher rate from our recovery well and expand the area capture. So back to that original figure, those 3 circles sort of in the center of the site, we should be able to capture those and effectively remediate those at a higher rate to, again, meet the current or hopefully the new standard if and when it's implemented. So, again, here are my key takeaways. We're mitigating the on-site source area. PFAS is continuing to decrease in the source area. looks like other areas of the site as well. And I'll mention actually that the last round wells that are on the our monitoring wells on the North Chelmsford Water District were below standards for the first time. All 4 of them that we monitor, and we installed them on the North Chelmsford Water District property. So we're certainly making progress on that front. And with that, I wanted to transition over to Linda's portion of the discussion here and her results on sort of the PFAS sources that are represented at the site. And with that, I'll turn it over to Linda.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so for the last report, I did a really deep dive into the data and for each of these samples and comparing them. So what I'm presenting here, we're getting into some chemistry here. What we have on the right side of the screen are they're histograms, which are showing all of the individual PFAS compounds that were detected, as well as on the axis, that's the concentration. So for the DPW source on the top graph, we have very high concentrations in that original source back from February of 2022. The PFAS 6 concentration was 1,400. But what you're seeing in that histogram is that PFOS was the dominant PFAS compound in our source. This is really telling. We can see this in those locations in the source area. We can see a dominant PFOS signature. But what we're also looking at in the bottom graph is we wanted to evaluate the upgradient. What contributions are coming onto the site that aren't related to the DPW? So here, again, it's the same compounds. The concentration scale is much different here. Maximum concentration is at 14 nanograms. But what you can see here is that the distribution is different. The relative response of PFOS is smaller than we see in the source. And I'm just going to look at 2 key parameters here, one being the concentration of PFOS, and then the second being that ratio of PFOS to PFOA. So as we start looking at all of the samples on the site, we can start identifying where are we having background samples for where are we having samples with a source impact. So the next slide. So here is just it's a scatter plot. On the x-axis, we're just simply showing PFOS concentration, and that's on a log scale. And on the y-axis, we're showing that ratio of PFOS to PFOA. So the green circle to the right is the source area before recovery. So we're seeing a high concentration of PFOS, as well as a higher relative ratio of that PFOS to PFOA. And we've started with the recovery well, and what we're seeing in the influent is a much lower concentration of PFOS, as well as a lower ratio. Those samples underneath, we're going to now zoom in. The next graph, we're going to zoom in up more closely. But what we can see here is that we've had a significant reduction in that source area of the concentration and both the ratio. In the next graph, this is just zooming in. The blue box in the lower left-hand corner, we bracketed what the regional background is at this location. Background was based on what we saw in the upgradient well, as what we also saw in the stream in that PZ2 location taken in Coldstone Brook right next to the site. So here we can bracket what our regional background is. Regional background in this area is likely, I believe, one of the primary sources might just be influences from domestic wastewater and septic systems. Based on my research, it seems that Chelmsford had a long history of primarily just septic systems, and it was more recently that actually sewer systems and lines went in place with a really big impact of it was necessary to help reduce some of that contamination to local groundwater. So here we're just zooming in here. What we're seeing here, the MW14S, is one of those wells down gradient of this site and on the property, the water district property. And we can see at MW14, we are seeing a higher concentration compared to background. We're also seeing a slightly elevated ratio of that PFOS to PFOA. Many of the other samples, when we're just focusing on PFOS as that primary contaminant from the DPW, a lot of the other locations around the site are really falling within background range. We are seeing slight relative increases of PFOS in town wells 3 and 4, but we don't see those increases in town wells 1 or 2 or 5 and 6. So this just gives us a broad overview of what we're seeing for all of the data. I do have some graphs coming up where we go into more detail about some of those specific locations. So we transition to the next slide. So the information I'm presenting here on the next few slides, it's all formatted the same. In the top graph, what we're seeing is that PFAS mass 6 concentration, the sum of 6 compounds, and that value regulated in mass should be 20 or less. This is MW1, and this is since treatment was initiated. I believe it was July 2022 with that first event in August. And what we can see here for both the mass 6 as well as the individual parts of that is we're seeing a steady decrease over time. This looks great. The graph on the bottom, I did something here. I wanted to separate the component of PFOS as compared to the other 5 components that are included in that PFAS 6 parameter for mass. So as we look at that again, we can see the steady decrease at monitoring well 1 with regard to PFOS. And, there's a kind of a more consistent for PFAS 6, but, altogether with treatment at this location, even those compounds have dropped out. So the next graph will be for MW2, which is also in this source area. And we're seeing for PFAS 6, we're seeing a concentration over the last few sampling events. It was down to 20 nanograms per liter. It increased up to 34. But when we look in the bottom graph, what we can see is that PFOS is still steadily decreasing. A little bit, that decrease isn't as significant right now. But what we see is that between May of 2024 and November, we've had an increase in the other parameters, the other 5 compounds associated in that mass 6. So this would be an indication of an influence that goes beyond the DPW's PFOS, but, is this related to, large volumes of water being pumped and pulling in some of the background? I'm not really sure, but I think that might be associated with what we're seeing. If we move on to slide 3, this is that upgradient location that we've been talking about. And again, for PFAS 6, it's that 20 nanograms. We can see in the top graph on the right that there's definitely sampling dates for which the 20 is exceeded or nearly exceeded up in the 19 nanogram per liter range, indicating that regional background is, definitely impacting water quality and what we're seeing with regards to PFAS 6 concentrations at the DPW site. So not only, it's impacting these local conditions as well as beyond. In the bottom graph, what we're seeing with the dark blue line is that PFOS concentration really, stays pretty consistent there. So not only the DPW is not the only PFAS source in the area, and what we're seeing is this low level that exists in our background. The next graph has to do with the stream. And again, what we see in the top is that we have at least a couple of cases where the 20 nanogram limit was exceeded, as well as, many that are very close to it. So again, this regional background is impacting the conditions at the DPW site and beyond. The bottom graph again is showing this sort of consistent concentration of PFOS, as well as for the other 5 PFAS in the mass profile. The next site, and sorry I'm flying through so fast. I know we have some time considerations here. At the dog park at 104, and this is the location that's pretty much real center in the dog park. What we did see back in February of 2023 is that we see this concentration spike of PFOS without really much of a concentration spike of the other compounds. It raised to 125 nanograms per liter and then has since dropped from then. So as Paul had said, we're really at concentrations since February of last year. We've been below 20 nanograms per liter at the dog park site. And so, an indication that it may be that treatment system that's really controlling any migration into this area. The next slide is for the 115, which is north, a little bit toward the north of the dog park, and may indeed actually be up gradient. So the water isn't flowing from our site up to 115. It would be flowing towards our site. We're seeing a lot of variability at this location, and we have, a number of occasions where we are above 20 nanograms per liter. But when we look at that bottom graph on the right, what we're seeing is the exceedances here and the variability are not related to PFOS, our site contaminant, but really related to the other PFAS that are part of the mass DP6. And then the last site is 101, and this is just slightly southwest, really the adjacent property to the DPW, just southwest. And again, what we're seeing, similar to MW 115 up at the dog park, what we're seeing here is really a pretty consistent PFOS concentration over time, but we have a really variable concentration of the other 5 compounds. And we're seeing, exceedance is more often than not at this location, really indicating that, there could be an independent point source of PFAS at this location, maybe related to prior operations at the site. I believe they did barrel relining, which could have been a process that involved the use of PFAS containing compounds. So that's a quick overview. Paul, is there anything else you want to add to those comments?
No, I think just to sum up, I think Linda with her deep dive into the data, and yes, maybe if we could go back to the figure here, I can sort of wrap it up. And I apologize, I should have put one at the end. But from the figure again, you can see MW 115 to the north and that 101 to the south, and both of those have signatures that don't represent the PFOS. And so as Linda's talking about PFOS and PFAS, unfortunately they're very similar. PFAS is sort of the family suite of compounds, and PFOS is the signature that's specifically tied or tagged as a characteristic, the predominance of PFOS, as to the release that came out of the structure. So there are other sources, MW3 and the PZ2 to the east. Again, those are upgrading locations, show different signatures, and the signatures of PFOS, which are centered around the site in the center there, are really, we've been really capturing those with the remedial system, and those PFOS signatures have been decreasing in response to our remedial system operation. So really, I guess I will leave you with good news, and that the remedial system is effectively treating the PFOS signature, and through Linda's efforts, we've really been able to identify and quantify and sort of pull out the data that demonstrates the other sources which are affecting this. And lastly, I'll leave you, this is important, it goes to our closure strategy. Obviously, we're not going to be able to remediate these background effects, which are regional effects, but really we're focusing on the effects of the PFOS release, which is characteristic of what came out of the DPW operation. So it's really helping us to narrow our efforts. And I guess I'll leave it at that.
Okay, any questions from the board for Paul or Linda? Okay, and,
Can I just,
sure.
Paul, let me see if I can just summarize this for a layperson. So, having read and looked at your presentation, what you're saying is your latest sampling in November, and I know you've taken some samples in last month, but we haven't seen that yet, but your latest data or samples of November show no exceedances on the 2 monitoring wells on the Water District's property, which is down gradient from the town site. It also shows that the locations that exceed the PFAS 6 criteria, the 3 that are central to the former highway yard operations on the property are being remediated, and your samplings are showing the PFOS is below the threshold requirements under the permitting from the state and federal sources, and then you're concluding that there's a sort of background or the natural, the everywhere chemical of what PFAS is perhaps what's indicating sources per north and southerly of the site, as well as upstream and the monitoring wells in the brook and coming onto the site. And so by the additional revisions to the plant that were done in December, we expect going forward that the continued treatment at the source site on the site really will continue to be below the threshold levels, but the reality is that there's other sources of the natural, everywhere chemical PFAS is sort of present in the sampling in the region. Is that sort of a summary of what you're finding out there?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much right on target. A couple small things. I will say that the MW 113 and 114, there's actually 4 wells over there, and all of them are below standards in this November round. And one thing I will tell you that we were out there a few weeks ago in February, but the site was all frozen over. So we're actually punting our seasonal round to March. I think everything's thawed now, so I believe we're out there next week to actually collect the next seasonal round. So
and you're going to be sampling.
Once we have those results, we'll happy to be back and talk about those results.
And you're going to be sampling the district sites as well this time again.
We are also, the road was completely frozen. We couldn't even access those, a few weeks ago in February. But I know the snow's gone from my yard, so I think we'll be out there shortly.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate the update and look forward to some more good news.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Good night.
Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up is the policy for town council appointment. We reviewed this at our last meeting. Nobody had any changes to suggest or recommend, so everybody still okay with it?
Ed, I just have one question that
Sure.
I thought of after this came out. In the second to last paragraph that starts, if the board decides to evaluate other firms, I think when we've looked at other firms in the past, we've given existing council the opportunity to participate in that process. Is that implied here, or is that anything that you would want to state, that existing town council has the opportunity to participate in that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could put it in there specifically.
So
but
that
I
it's
would
clear.
anticipate- Yeah, I would anticipate.
That was my only
Okay.
thought.
All right. Although there might be situations where we would, put, depending on.
Depending on the situation, they may or may not,
Right.
right? So I guess it doesn't necessarily preclude them, depending on the situation.
Right. So, I don't know, would you feel better if it wasn't there, or?
Well, my question was, what did you intend by that paragraph?
Yeah.
Was it that, and if it, because it just says if the board decides to evaluate other firms, the chair will reach out to qualified firms. but it doesn't, it's silent on the existing council. So I didn't know if you wanted something stated there or not, or if you just want to leave it to
So
board discretion.
So should it say if the board decides to evaluate other firms, the chair will reach out to other qualified firms, including the incumbent
Yeah,
firm?
that would work.
Okay.
Which may include?
Which may include
May
the
include,
incumbent,
okay.
that,
May include, doesn't-
because we may not want, you may not want to, but
Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question too? I feel like I know we talked about the timeline, but it does seem like 2 weeks. So is 2 weeks enough time
I think so.
from one meeting to the next meeting to reach out, to have them get back with materials and have someone show up?
Yeah,
Is
if
that
they're interested,
sufficient?
they'll turn
Right,
something around.
and there's only so many, it's not like
Yeah.
we have 20 that we would reach out to.
Yeah.
There's probably, no more than 4 or 5.
Okay.
So, and I think in the past, we have given them, that timeline and they.
2 weeks
they've
is pretty
reached it.
standard. Okay. Yeah, that was my,
Okay.
thank you.
they pretty much have the proposal written already.
Yeah, exactly.
They
They
do
just
the same
changed the name of
proposal
the town.
And I
Yeah.
think if there was an extension needed or something, the board could just
Yeah.
do that at their discretion.
Okay, so could we have a motion with that amendment?
I will, where am I? I'll make a motion to adopt the town council appointment process? Is this what this is?
Policy.
Policy? To adopt the town council appointment policy as presented.
As amended.
Oh, as amended. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second, so we'll do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Aaron?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm aye. 5-0, thank you. Okay. All right, so we're to priorities and earmarks for the House. Paul, if you want.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Since the board's last meeting, the state legislature has made their committee assignments and has begun the process of hearings on the governor's proposed FY '26 state operating budget. The House intends to adhere to its traditional schedule of adopting a budget by the end of April, which basically means that they're going to have to release a proposed budget the second week of April, and then amendments are submitted, and then basically they'll adopt and vote it, and then send it off to the Senate for the beginning of May, which the Senate will do its process in May, and then ultimately, hopefully, come to a resolution, complete budget adopted by July 1st or shortly thereafter. As that is prelude, basically, because of that process, Representative Cataldo's office reached out to me, and basically, it's now time for the legislators to submit their budget priorities and earmarks for the member communities. And so he's basically has asked a response from the town by this Wednesday. So I placed this on the agenda tonight and have submitted the draft memo in terms of suggestions in light of what the town has recently done in recent years. We don't know, because of the state budget uncertainty with the potential unknown of federal funding levels, what extent of earmarks they will fund, or if, there have been some years where they didn't fund member earmarks because it was so dire. But I think what we can do this evening is basically convey to the delegation in the House what general concerns we have on the state budget, and also if there are earmarks, what they might be specific to Chelmsford. I think they understand that the priorities of the communities is local aid in terms of Chapter 70 funding, revenue sharing and so forth. But if there are other items that the board may have, and then if there are earmark requests, the three that I listed have been in line with what we've seen in recent years in terms of type of requests as well as funding levels. For the past half dozen or so years, Representative Arcero has submitted a $25,000 earmark for senior center food and nutrition programs, and this deals with food insecurity. And as we know, the food insecurity situation has only become more severe, as we heard last week. from representatives from the food pantry and the Table of Plenty. So again, I think that warrants consideration. The traditional funding level in that has been $25,000 in the Meals on Wheels program that goes out through the senior center. The other two, the second one being the Freeman Lake Management. As the board knows, they recently, and we've announced here, they recently had a hearing, and we have an open house that was announced earlier this evening in terms of the Freeman Lake treatment, in terms of the water quality and issues of Freeman Lake. And I think the $80,000 ones was identified at the presentation and in the materials to help reduce or eliminate the nuisance species and the introduction of new aquatic invasive species. And it's almost similar to what you heard on the PFAS. One of the concerns on the water quality at Freeman Lake is the brook that flows into Freeman Lake. And so they think around the $75,000, $80,000 level could address some work in that issue in terms of almost like baffling what's coming in as a means of addressing the invasives and aquatic growth in the lake. So that's why I offered that one. And then the third one is we've seen is this whole issue of the climate change and the tree canopy issues, as was announced since our last meeting by the state, and we've talked about. They are doing a tree canopy restoration this year at the through a grant program at the dog park. And so again, this would further advance that in terms of the additional of planting shade trees and reduce of invasive species in the community. So to again address air quality, the urban heat island effect, and beautification of neighborhoods. So those are three that came to mind and suggestions, and obviously any others that the board may have, we can forward them along. And then similarly, next month or so, once it goes in the Senate, we can make additional ones to Senator Barrett, because you really only need to get the earmarks in one house. Generally, it's what carries you through. So you could, if some of these get funded, you can submit all different ones to the senator's office and see what he may be able to help us, as we've seen in the past.
Okay, any questions or other suggestions for these earmarks?
Paul, on the Freeman Lake one, so at the public meeting that they had, the input session, there was some low-hanging fruit that had some urgency to it that Christine Clancy said she had in her budget
Yep,
to
exactly.
start, because this would be too late for that. So this is that next step
This is the next
after
step.
that,
Exactly.
okay.
Yep, the initial
Great.
steps they're gonna be out there doing right
Yeah.
away in terms of the beach area and weed pulls and so forth. And none of this goes to chemicals, because we know there's still, that's the issue hasn't been
Right.
resolved. But, so that's why I didn't do anything in terms of that, because the last thing we want to do is have it hung up with an appeal, which is kind of what's brought us to where we are in the lake process. So this again is is trying to address issues to improve the quality of the lake water itself. And I thought obviously Representative Elliott, who's been very much involved with that, and this does fall in his district. I'm sure that he may sign on as a sponsor for this. So you kind of see I got Representative Arciero with one. This one probably falls in the lap of Representative Elliott, and then again we could assign the third one or another one to Representative Cataldo.
Okay, anybody else have any comments?
Did they take Acero off the housing?
Yes.
Yeah, he's now on the transfer. He's now chair
Yeah,
of the
I saw
transportation
that.
committee,
I didn't know,
which is
but-
pretty impressive, because I think as he's put it out, and he's made an announcement, he led the major housing bond bill last session, and this year, this session, the governor's really proposing a major transportation bill. So the speaker basically pivoted Representative Arcero to now chair that effort. So I think it kind of indicates that the speaker wants him as a result of his past achievements in this important effort for transportation.
Okay,
You know who is now in charge of housing?
It's no one in our,
On the other end, the South
sources.
Shore?
Yeah,
were
it's
they
nobody in
making
our
a
area.
big, they got all the money down here last year?
okay. Next up is a suggested meeting schedule for April. George and Virginia, you probably don't care.
This is the time where we are looking at the April schedule, because we're starting to schedule hearings and licenses. And this year is different than last year because of the number of Mondays and Tuesdays and such that fall and when town meeting falls. And so last year we sort of had an extra Monday. So what this does, because remember the first this year is a Tuesday, which is why the election's on the first. Last year, the first was a Monday, so we had an extra Monday in April before town meeting. The way it is now, the election being on the first, and 2 days later, the board would do its traditional reorg, which is a real brief, ceremonial meeting, and then come back the following Monday, which is traditional on the 7th. But because we lose a Monday, 2 weeks after that would be the normal board meeting, but that's the Patriots' Day holiday, and then the Monday after that becomes the first session of town meeting, which could go 3 sessions. So the problem is you either schedule back-to-back Mondays on the 14th, or you're gonna have to pick a different night of the week of the 21st or some other time, because you could be basically going like 4 to plus weeks without a meeting, depending on how, the town meeting projected schedule goes. So that's why I bring it here, to help us schedule hearings and licenses and so forth.
Yeah, and recommendations for town meeting.
Yes, that as well, so, because you'd have the extra meeting. So I think clearly you want a second meeting before spring annual town meeting starts. The question is, do you want to do it on the subsequent Monday, the 14th, or you'd have to do it during the week of the 21st, which then bangs you into other board meetings, quite frankly, because like the planning board will be meeting the 23rd, and that would be the night of the town meeting information session and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Mondays are fine, Aaron, you okay with that? Pat, you okay with the Mondays?
Yeah, my physical attendance may still be tenuous at that time, but I would like to meet that schedule that Paul's presented, and I can at least assure that I can attend remotely.
Okay,
Okay, great. Again, if something comes up, we can schedule a special meeting if the
yeah,
need arises.
if we need to.
Okay,
yeah.
great, thank you.
Okay, bid awards.
Yeah, one bid award this evening, and it's a significant one. This is the West and South Fire Station Designer Services. Our Fire Chief, Gary Ryan, is here in the room. Obviously, it's very near and dear to him, and been part of the building committee and Fire Station Study Committee process, as obviously Virginia was. The good news is they received 7 proposals for designer services for the fire station process. The subcommittee of the Permanent Building Committee completed the interviews and basically came to a unanimous decision to recommend Gallant Architectural Studio as the designer services. That recommendation was adopted by the full Permanent Building Committee. Their fee schedule comes within the budget for the project, and so therefore the request this evening is for the Select Board's confirmation of the bid award for the fire station design service contract to the Gallant Architectural Studio.
Okay, are there any questions about this quite lengthy
Yeah,
presentation?
they do have a lengthy proposal. Yeah. But they're very experienced, and I think that was one of the things that's impressive, is their work on previous fire station projects. Chief, is there anything you
Chief
want to
Ryan?
add to this, or?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So I just have one, it just looks like it's a typo. I think it's
Could
on
be.
the certificate of authority from the meeting of the Board of Directors, which is about page 95.
Yep,
It looks like it has the wrong date at the top. It says the second day of January 2024. I think they mean 2025.
yeah, it could be, unless.
I mean, is that relevant or important to have that be accurate?
Yeah, that would be, it should be 25, because you look at the date below, it's dated 25, yeah, that's a typo.
Right,
Yep.
okay,
Okay.
so, just thought I'd point it out in case it needs to be corrected, but maybe not. So if nobody has any questions, Virginia, since you were on the fire
No, I'm
station.
good. I
Okay.
trust their process.
All right, so we'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to award the bid for West and South Fire Stations designer services to Gallant Architecture Studio as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George? Erin?
Aye.
Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm aye. Thank you. Okay, town manager reports.
Yeah, real briefly this evening, the first and probably most pressing one is the town's emergency ambulance services contract. Basically, 3 years ago, we awarded a contract to what was then Trinity Emergency and Healthcare Transport, division of Pride Star. And it basically is a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options for extensions at a 5% increase in the annual fee. We're now at the end of this fiscal year, in just over 3 months, at the end of that 3-year period. So basically, I'm notifying the board that I'm exercising the town's right to extend that contract as required. We've never done sort of board confirmations of extensions because you've approved the contract in general, but I just wanted to make the board aware that I'll be exercising formally the notice on the contract extension.
So I just have a question on the second to last
Sure.
paragraph.
Mhm.
In consideration whereof, the party of the second part, which
Yep.
is the town, agrees to pay the party of the first part. Isn't that reversed?
Yeah, yeah, you're right, that is a typo, but, right, because if you go to the early in the part,
Yeah.
Trinity is the first part, so it should be the first part to the second part.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, all right. Just want to make sure we don't have to pay
Yeah,
them.
we're not gonna pay them for the services. The next item I have is inform the board that, how we're doing it tonight, the hybrid remote options for public meetings is once again expiring, this time on March 31st. We expect the legislature will act upon it, but thus far, there's no known date for legislative action, so I just wanted the MMA has been pushing this out as well, Mass Municipal Association, and just to inform the board and the community that this is something that I think we've found to be effective, and the sort of pressures on both sides. But I think the position of the municipal association is to continue to leave it at local option, which meetings they conduct and how they conduct them. So I just point of information to let people know that
But-
we're looking for legislative action on this. And I don't know if you want to.
Even if that does expire, the way we're meeting tonight is
Right.
still legal.
Yep.
It'll still be legal.
Yep.
Okay, as long as we have a quorum present and the
The room,
chair is
right.
present. Yeah.
But ultimately, under this, that if there were something like, you know, what, as you described, what, this could happen, but if there were 3 remote tonight, we
Right.
could not do it.
Exactly.
Right,
right.
No more
and
than
there are
2.
some communities, believe it or not, that are still doing, significant amounts of meetings, even select board meetings.
Fully
Fully
remote.
remote, so.
Okay.
So anyway, I just wanted the board and the community to be aware of that. And then the last thing under my report is to formally notify the board and the community that the decorative clock for Vinyl Square has been ordered. As you call, Bill Gillette was in several months ago, giving the presentation, the fundraising efforts, and they've sent the deposit for that payment, and in several months, that clock will be fully paid for and delivered and installed with the coordination of DPW. So just a status report on that effort.
Okay, thank you. All right, next thing is meeting minutes. We have one set of minutes from February 24th. Anybody have any edits or corrections on this set of minutes? If not, we'll take a motion.
Make a motion to approve the Select Board regular meeting minutes of February 24th, 2025 as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll do a roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
George? Aaron? Virginia?
Aye.
And I'm aye. Thank you. All right, we're to selectmen liaison reports and referrals, select board members, not selectmen. Pat, do you have any?
Yes, so I want to update on Permanent Building Committee. You just heard from Paul that the designer, we all just approved the designer selection by the subcommittee. So the next steps now are, there's an RFP out for the owner's project manager that is due in March 27th. They'll be conducting a site visit on Thursday for interested folks to come. So once the proposals come in from the OPM, there'll be another selection process. And then once you get that OPM on board, and now that you have the architect on board, you can start the schematic design process and start moving down the road on that project. So that's some good news. Also from Permanent Building Committee, most folks have probably seen that there's new metal siding on North Chelmsford Fire Station. And just to reiterate what happened, we had a severe failure of the faux brick siding that was put on there. And so it all had to be removed, and we didn't see any good way to try to put the same thing back on. So it was decided to go with some metal. So out of that, there's been a few neighborhood concerns of the just the broadsidedness of the gray siding, if you will. So the permanent building committee is entertaining a new trim option to try to just put a little more architectural interest into the building, and just try to break up the vastness of the long side of the building, if nothing else, but to break up that vastness of the solid gray siding. So they're awaiting a trim option on that and pricing, and they'll be moving forward on that. So that's the permanent building committee. On the school building committee for the Parker Middle School, there was a meeting today of the subcommittee for the selection of the OPM. We had received proposals a couple of weeks ago, and so the subcommittee shortlisted down to 4 people that we'd like to interview. Those interviews will be conducted next Wednesday, so we're finally off and running on that. Once we do those interviews, we will pick a finalist, and then we will submit on April 16th to MSBA, Mass School Building Authority, of our preferred owner's project manager. And then once we get their approval, we have a meeting with them on, actually their approval will come on a meeting on May 12th with Mass School Building Authority. And that will give us the time and release to go ahead and hire the owner's project manager. So that will be good if we can get that done by May. We would immediately move on to designer selection and go through the same process such that we have the designer on board by midsummer latest. And then we can get down to the same work that the permanent building committee is about to start, which is educational review, schematic design, and so on. So that's what's going on the school building committee, and that's all I have this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. George?
That's it.
Aaron? Virginia?
Yeah, so from the North Chelmsford Water District, they're going to be posting their hydrant flushing schedule for the spring season soon, and they'll be sending out information as an insert with the customers' bills when those come. Just to follow up on the strategic plan public service announcement, so the public comment is due this Friday, and then the committee is meeting on the 27th of March to review whatever comes in from that. And then there'll be an iteration, and the committee will meet again on April 12th. And then we expect that it will come to the select board after that for adoption. The Ledge Road truck traffic issues have been with the select board for years, so I just want to mention that the Zoning Board of Appeals hearing is expected to resume on April 3rd. And Finance Committee is resuming this Thursday, right, Paul?
Yes.
With the budget hearings and also the reviews of the warrant articles. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention is, I don't know, several months ago I had noticed some reporting from National Grid about the gas leaks that they have under the ground in the regions that they serve. And I talked to Paul a little bit about it, which is really not much that's in our control. But then we recently had residents raising concerns about that too when the last quarterly report came out. So, you know, Paul explained that this is really under the purview of the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities, and that from a legislative standpoint, Senator Barrett would probably be our key legislator given his chairmanship on the Telecom and Utilities and Energy Committee. One of the things that I talked to Paul about is if that's the way to work it, that the board might want to consider the next time we bring our legislators in, putting that as one of the agenda topics to, you know, is there anything they can do to help their constituents address those leaks? And it's kind of like, to me, it's almost like the double polls, like that's not out of our control either, but look where we've influenced it to the point where MMA is putting some proposed legislation. And so I think that might be an important topic for the community to consider
Okay.
in the next round.
Thanks. Okay, I just have a couple of things. First of all, last week we welcomed a new patrol officer to the Chelmsford Police Department, Derek Stark, who was a transfer from another community, so that was good. We didn't have to send him through the police academy. He'd already been, so that was a good thing. Also wanted to mention that the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments is sponsoring a Greater Lowell Economic Summit at Cross Point Towers at UKG, which used to be Kronos, on Thursday, March 20th, from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. They have like a half a dozen different sessions, so you can check out the schedule and register at the NEMCOG website, nemcog.org/summit, and it also includes a guided tour of the rail trail in that area, so something not to be missed.
But you don't have to be there the whole time.
You don't have to be there the whole time, that's correct. All right, so that's all I have, so we'll take a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Pat?
Aye.
Aye.
Which?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm aye. Thank you very much.